It's been a little over a year, so here's my update on the pros and cons of the Mittleider gardening system. As you can see, everything's growing well. My beans are a little bit behind just because they had such a hard time getting started. But overall, it's been a good year. The number one most important thing, I love my harvest. The size of the fruit that I get now and vegetables is just amazing. It's not only the size of my produce that's been impressive, but the yield has been as well. One of the things that I didn't like was the strings. You have to come out here and multiple times every week work your tomatoes and your melons and certain squashes up the line. With a garden my size, that took up an incredible amount of time. So I did kind of a hybrid version of it. If you look at these fence lines here, I was able to do some cattle panel and then just do the very top part in string, and that has made a huge difference time-wise. Another thing that I did was I used my cattle panel tunnel, and I have my cucumbers growing on these. Honestly, if I were to redo things, I think I would just use the cattle panel tunnel. It was so much easier to put up than the T-frames. It doesn't look quite as nice, but I have to admit, once the vegetables start growing on it, it looks pretty. I love the raised beds because everything's kind of compartmentalized. I have my tomato bed, I have my melon bed, I have, it just makes it super easy. And then when I put the wood chips in the aisleway, they stop right at the edge, so it provides a great barrier for that. One of the things I didn't like was how close he recommended planting your plants. Because of the fact that they grow so much bushier, they end up crowding each other out a lot and you don't have as much ventilation. We actually had some trouble last year with the powdered mildew because they couldn't get dried out well enough. One of the other things I really liked was the drip system because it's so easy for me to water my plants without having the overhead watering. For a few of our beds, like the corn, we had to make it so that the water actually watered the entire bed instead of just on the two sides of the pipe. So we turned the pipes just a little bit so that they would get the whole bed. Pruning my melons and my cucumbers was another thing that I determined was just unnecessary. If you wanted to go ahead and prune right after the watermelon, just so that it got a little bit bigger, you could do that. But I didn't feel like it gave me any more melons or made them any bigger by pruning them the way the book recommended. I also really like how easy it is to weed with this system because the roots, they just don't have any rocks or anything like that to hold on to. In the course book, it has a recipe for doing your own micronutrients, or you can just go ahead and buy them. Now, I was buying them as a little packet, but it was so much more expensive than getting my own micronutrients and putting that together just like the recipe in the book. Another thing that I did differently this year is I didn't start as many of my vegetables in the flats. A lot more of them I started right in the garden. Problem was, it ended up being a really cold early spring and a really hot late spring, which makes it excessively difficult for the tiny plants to get going. So essentially that one is one that I didn't do what he recommended and kind of wish that I had. So long story short, do I love this gardening method? I do. Do I think that you can tweak it a little bit to make it work for your area, for your situation? Yes, I do. So I really recommend the first year doing it exactly the way that he says. But after that, go ahead and play with it. See what works for you.